as we progress. I hope you're all suitably refreshed and you had a bit less time in front of the computer this morning. That's good news. We've got a few welcomes. So I've got two members of the public with us, Brian and Ron, and we've got Alex from IESO Health. So welcome to them. Apologies, I've got John Martin, Nick Hibbard, Mark Cook, and Richard is representing Mark from NHSE, Rob Hayday, Deb Al-Sayed, and I think Kerry is joining us for her item, and then Rosie Shepherd, and I think Layla is joining us for Rosie's item on the agenda as well. So that's all the apologies I've got. Lucy, have we got any others, or Lauren?
No, that's all of them, Jeff. Thanks.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much. So declarations of interest. Is there any declarations of interest anybody wants to raise that they haven't raised previously or conflict with items on the agenda for today? No? Great. Thank you very much. So you've got the minutes of the meeting of the 6th of March have been circulated. Anybody want to raise any issues with the content or comment on the minutes from the last meeting? No? Great. Okay, thanks very much. We've got two outstanding items. Joe, the first one was for you around the EDI report. I haven't had an update on that. It seems it's going to be discussed, but it hasn't been closed.
Oh, it has been discussed and agreed and approved, Chair. So that item should come to an end now and actually has been published as well. Okay,
thanks, Joe. That's brilliant. And the second one on there is for Deb around the innovation improvement framework. Shane, I know Deb's not with us, but I don't know whether we can comment on that or whether I should leave it for the next meeting.
All I would say is, Chair, and I'll ask Debs to formally update it. We've had a huge amount of work in the last 4 or 5 weeks on this, working across the system and actually doing a lot of work with the senior exec team and using the framework. So actually, I'll make sure Debs updates that, but it is active and live, Jeff.
Okay, thanks, Shane. So any other questions or comments on the actions from the last meeting or outstanding actions? Okay, thank you very much. Over to you then, Shane.
Thank you, Chair. So as always, colleagues, 3 big things. What I want to talk about today is what I've entitled Preparing for Reform, update on the VCSE Alliance, and then our system plan for 25-26. Won't go into detail, won't read the paper, obviously, I assume you have, but just highlight the key parts. So I think it was important on the beginning of April 2025, Jim Mackey, as the Chief Executive of NHSE, wrote to all Chief Executives, trusts and ICBs, setting out what he described as the working together to lay the foundations for reform. There's a link to the letter in the paper, but I've tried to call out I think some important highlights from it, because I think what's clear is as an ICB, we can get very involved in what do these changes mean for the ICB. But this is about a system, and what you can see in that letter, there are a number of things that are really important that the system understands. So there's elements around financial planning, and at the time of writing the letter, there was still quite a big gap in the financial plans. That has been bridged across the country. It does talk about leadership and transparency is a thing that keeps coming back and back and back. So when we were in London earlier this week with Jim and the team and all chief executives, transparency came up a lot. The idea of the public should be able to see how organisations are performing. Board should be open and transparent. So transparency was very strong in the letter, and obviously has been repeated numerously in the meetings we've had. The one obviously that as a board we'll be very focused on is what's happening with ICBs, and we'll come on to that in a minute. And then other aspects with regards to some of the corporate cost reductions, and you can see in the letter, in terms of NHS providers having to make a 50% reduction in their growth in corporate costs. And then quite clearly other things around winter preparedness. What I would say, Chair, strong responsibility around this table is obviously what happens to the ICB in all of that, and lots of work underway across the Southwest with our ICB colleagues and with the regional team as well, to really begin to try to map out what the future model for ICBs will be. And what I've included in my paper is just a little diagram of the concept of strategic commissioning, which is going to be at the heart of our new organisation. This particular diagram is one that NHS Confed pulled together in their document, Pioneers of Reform. But it shows really what the future ICB will be. It'll be about population health management, it'll be about driving planning, and then monitoring outcomes. And the final put under that first section is just we've got to deliver this new ICB, but clearly we have to do it under a much reduced cost envelope. And just so that the board are aware in the public board meeting, that we're being monitored on a unit cost per population. The target unit cost for all ICBs in the country will be £18.76, and BNSSG is currently at £33. That is medium to low compared to others, but still shows quite a large gap, and activity will need to undertake to rethink what an ICB is about. More than happy, as you are aware, Chair, whenever we request further to bring this back to an open board. But as you can all appreciate, there's an awful lot going on across the systems to try to make this work. The second big thing I wanted then to highlight in the report was, during all this change, I think we can become very focused and potentially inward focused, and yet BNSSG has done some brilliant stuff, and we have to make sure we keep a focus on that as we move forward. And what I want to try and do with the next number of Chief Executive reports is bring something we should be really proud of to this table. And therefore, what I wanted to bring this time around was the work we've done with the VCSE Alliance as a really proud thing that we have done. Now, you know, we've still got a journey to travel, so I'm not presenting it as the absolute finished product of everything we ever wanted, but it's something that we should be very proud of. We're working with the VCSE Alliance, with VCSE ambassadors who are really working in our system. We've got the VCSE brokerage scheme, and we've also building a new strategy, a VCSE strategy. And you can read for yourself in there, but I just wanted to bring it because we should present positive things that BNSSG should take forward into whatever organizational construct we find ourselves in. You know, we should be very proud of the VCSE Alliance and the work we've done over the first 6 months. 175 VCSE organizations joined the framework, etc. So really a really strong thing for VCSE, and something we should be very proud of in BNSSG. And then the final part is to bring to the public board meeting just where we are with the systems plan. So we've worked collectively across the system to address this year's system plan. We have presented a compliant break-even plan for 25-26, one which is embedded in real truth and activity. And you can clearly see the work we have to do and what we are projecting to achieve. Now, that does not mean it will be easy. It will not be a walk in the park to deliver our plans. No plan ever is. But we've gone into a lot of detail with our partners to really get to a strong plan around elective cancer diagnostic UEC, and also to make sure that the money balances. And I just want to say a big thanks to Sarah and the team, to Nick and others, because the amount of work in coordinating a system to bring together a strong plan which puts our population at the heart of what we're doing is no easy task. It's not like a planning for a single organization. This is planning for a system, and it's working across all of the system to bring it together. And you can see what we have committed to achieve in the plan this year. So, Chair, that's a quick summary of my report. I'm happy to take any comments or questions.
Okay, thanks, Shane. Before I open to questions, we've had a late question from Ron Mendel, who's with us. I think you've probably just covered it in your answer, but he's asking, with the 50% cuts in ICBs, how is that going to affect the overall health strategy? So I think that's back to your point about it's not all about change, it's about actually we're here to deliver a service.
Yeah, I think what's important, the new model of ICBs is very focused on health strategy, very focused on strategic commissioning. And actually what this is asking us to do is to refocus the ICB on that issue of health strategy, which is great. That obviously has to be balanced with the fact that we're also being asked to take, 38% of our cost down. And that's not going to be easy. So the next couple of months is how we begin to work our way through how we address that. but actually this should make us better at focusing on our health strategy, actually not worse.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Shane. Any questions for Shane or any comments? You can raise your hand in the normal way for me. That would be helpful. Ellen.
Sorry, couldn't get my mic box off. Sorry. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Shane, for the update. Really helpful. Just one question on page 8, looking at the system plan. It shows workforce reducing by 2%. And just wanted to understand, given the reduction of 50% in corporate roles, have we modelled what that means in terms of frontline workforce? So overall, it's suggesting a 2% reduction, but I'm just wondering that given the move from corporate into frontline, does that mean we're equal on frontline, or is there still a reduction?
We have modelled that, and there is a reduction in post. I don't know if Sarah, you want to come in terms of the detail of the plan. Each individual organisation has also done that, so it is a reduction on frontline staff. What I think is important before Sarah comes in is that reduction is only taking us back to a place where we were. We've grown considerably over the last 3 years, but I wonder whether Sarah, you want to give the detail of the numbers in terms of what the actual reduction is.
Yeah, so I mean, it is complicated because there's a range of moving parts all at the same time, because we've got things like the elective centre opening, but we have got that sort of significant savings requirement, obviously both the national efficiency requirement as well as the issues that we carried forward from this year. So we have done quite a lot of work triangulating that with all of the performance metrics. Obviously, a huge amount of focus on all of the productivity areas. And you'll remember from previous discussions that we've got particular opportunities really to improve productivity, particularly on some of our elective and outpatient pathways, which people are following through. So it is really targeting in those areas to make sure that we're both able to deliver the great performance that's sort of set out here in terms of achieving those performance metrics, while at the same time living within the resource envelope. Some of the corporate costs, although there is a lot of work already underway, the letter that came in obviously was after we'd submitted the draft operational plan. So we're just doing some more work now just to make sure we're triangulating that bit.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, thanks, Ellen. Got Alison, Dominic, and then Fiona.
Thanks, Jeff. Shane, thanks very much for your report. And I particularly welcome the BCSE section, because actually having it set out is really helpful, and I think should be something we should be really pleased with. So thank you. I had a question on the plan. It was on page 8. I thought Ellen was going to go there, but just in terms of the efficiency savings now being 5.8%, which is obviously more than 3.9% from last year. And we've got the organisational change enormous that's here. Is there anything we need to be mindful of as a board, we need to understand as a board, we need to support as a board in terms of getting higher savings in a time where there are distractions along the way, I guess, if put it that way?
So I think the first thing I would say is that we've worked with the providers. We have a very clear understanding of where savings are coming from. We have the Performance and Recovery Board, which is the process we use to monitor and work with our partners to make sure that those savings can be achieved. And there are clear lines of sight to those plans. So the first thing is we have a really robust process, and each organisation is committed to it. And it's not fabricated, it's real. They've literally got it down to team, area, unit, etc. Okay, but the point you make is perfectly made, which is in the time of transition, the additional risk. That's why we've got to be so strong on the Performance and Recovery Board. We meet every month. DOFs are meeting, Department Directors of Finance are meeting on a regular basis. COOs are meeting, because we all know if we cannot deliver this, the systems will not function. So I can't describe to you the focus on it, but the point you make is real. There's a risk. We're carrying a risk because both the ICB will be looking at organisational change and some of the big changes in our providers as well. So we have a close grip, but it's a known risk that we're trying to work with, Alison. But I really do stress we've got line of sight to strong plans, and providers are all over those strong plans.
Thanks, Shane. Dominic?
Yeah, it's a comment rather than a question, really, and it's just to add a bit of colour to partnership working with the voluntary and community sector. Our rehabilitation service in Bristol was recently awarded formal accreditation for the quality of its service by the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and crucially, that service is jointly provided by AWP and Second Step, so it's as much their accreditation, if not more their accreditation, than ours. And I was privileged to attend recently a development workshop with them. So, well, if we now know what best practice looks like and we're doing it in Bristol, how do we then do that in South Gloucestershire, North Somerset and beyond? And the energy in the room was palpable. You couldn't see the join between clinical staff working for AWP, voluntary community sector staff working for Second Step and other voluntary sector providers, experts by experience with lived experience. And it's just to say that when we get this right, and it hasn't always been right between AWP and the VCSE, but when you get it right, the opportunities are phenomenal. So I also commend what Shane has said and the board's kind of support for that as a way forward. It's a really powerful way of transforming services.
Thanks, Dominic. That's really helpful. Fiona?
Well, as the VCSE Alliance rep, it would be remiss of me not to comment on Shane's glowing report. I can't tell you how pleased I am with the support, with the direction of travel. We are a coalition of the willing. We have distributed leadership. We do an awful lot more than we're funded to do. We punch above our weight, we really do. And Dominic, what you've just said is just really heartening, because the question I keep coming back to is what do we mean by true integration? What does that really look like? And it is when you can't see the difference between VCSE, statutory, public body, and it's about how we all work together. And we've made such ground over the last 18 months, 2 years, well, 5 years. You know, there are many of us that were part of the localities as they were developed. I sat on the Woodspring Locality Board, and how the VCSE has really grown and how the VCSE Alliance has really grown, and we've done it with support. So I just wanted to say thank you, and also just to put it out there, and how much more can we do? Because it is about, you know, looking at those strategies and looking at the integration and the return on investment. And with the work of the VCSE Alliance and our VCSE colleagues across the sector, we can do a lot about improving wellbeing and health, and we can reduce some of those costs. So I'm absolutely excited.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. Steve?
Yeah, just an observation, I guess. If we think back to why we created in the first place, remember that the primary focus was around reducing health inequalities and providing better access, and working, I think, in partnership. What we're starting to see are the green shoots of that actually becoming a reality. We are making a difference, and those partnerships that Fiona and Dominic have identified are key. We really need to celebrate that work, because that's grassroots change that's going to make a difference and reduce some of those health inequalities. So we're on the right tracks. We just got to make sure that we don't lose this as we go forward. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Last word, Shane, anything else you want to add?
No, I just think we need to, that's why I'm bringing the good stuff. We need to build on the good stuff and make sure ICB version 2 has those good stuff built into it. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Shane. Unless anybody's got any other points, I'll move us on. So the next item on the agenda is items for assurance and approval. And the first one is the maternity update. I know that Rosie's not with us, but Layla is. So hi, Layla. Nice to see you. The floor's yours.
Thanks, Jeff. And hi, everyone. I'm Layla. I'm the Deputy Director for Quality and Safety for Maternity and Neonatology within the ICB. And I've come today to give an update of what's been happening in the local maternity and neonatal system world, focusing on the key achievements of 24-25, and then also focusing on the priorities for this forthcoming year. And I think a lot of what I'm going to talk about actually fits in really nicely with what Shane has said. So firstly, I just wanted to say how proud we should all be of our perinatal services within BNSSG. We really do have high performing maternity systems. Many of you will remember that both of them have been rated as good by the CQC when we were last inspected. And that really is important because 75% of the country has got maternity services that are either requiring improvement or are inadequate. So I just wanted to start with that we really should be proud. We continue to have lower than the average stillbirth rates, and our neonatal death rate is also under the national average. However, this is all really positive, but what we must never be is complacent. And we know that there's a lot of work that needs to happen within maternity services about reducing those health inequalities, improving inequity, particularly for our underserved communities. And what you'll see through this report is how that agenda is really the golden thread that runs through everything that's happening from a perinatal aspect at the moment. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was our maternity and neonatal voice partnership development. We were in the position last year that we had quite a significant gap within our MMVP. The maternity and neonatal voice partnership is a statutory requirement for maternity services to work with our service users so that the voice of the woman and the family is always at the centre of everything that we do. And we've done a huge amount of work as a system with both our maternity providers, with Health Watch via the Care Forum, who host our MMVP, to develop a structure that not only fits with the national guidance that came out in 2023, but really works to serve our population. And I'm, again, really proud to say that we have now got a structure that replicates the national guidance. We've got a group of MMVP leads that are really diverse, that actually do reflect our population. And we've got 4 amazing leads that work with our maternity providers. We've got someone that is purely focused on community engagement and really going out to our local communities and finding out what's important to them and closing that feedback loop. We've got someone that specifically looks at neonatal issues and speaks to parents whose babies are on the neonatal unit or have experienced neonatal care. And we've got a strategic lead now that's hosted by the ICB that brings all of that together and makes sure that the service user voice is at the centre of everything we do. We are the only ICB/LMNS to have this structure within the Southwest. And the whole team is currently developing a strategic ambition framework, which is purely focused on improving equity and reducing inequalities and working with our service users for that. So that really was a big piece of work for last year, and really looking forward to seeing what happens with that over the forthcoming year. Many of you will remember that I've shared the 3-year delivery plan previously when I've come to board. So the 3-year delivery plan is the strategic ambition for maternity services. We're now entering the 3rd and final year of this plan. And the plan is laid out very clearly stating responsibilities for NHS England, responsibilities for ICBs and LMNSs, and then responsibilities for our providers. What I have put in the pack under the Appendix 1 is purely the 29 objectives that ICBs and LMNSs have to do. And we have recently had a stock take as we kind of enter the 3rd year of exactly where we are. And we did that collaboratively with our maternity providers so that we're all making sure that all of our efforts are triangulated and we're working well together. And what you'll see in that document is that we've got a lot of green, which is good. We've got a lot of objectives that we've met, and that what we're working on this year is making sure that they're really embedded, and that we've got a sustainability plan for how we continue to maintain that focus even once the 3-year delivery plan has finished. There are 13 objectives that are still RAG rated as amber or red. So they are our key priorities for this year. And within each of them, there is a a plan that is embedded within it. We have a monthly delivery and transformation meeting that we meet to make sure that we're maintaining the trajectory on of those. And the plan is that by the end of the 3 years, every single one of those will be complete. We met recently with our Southwest maternity team, who pulled all of the LMNSs together, and actually we were highlighted as doing this in a really robust way, and we've been invited by the Southwest to show how we are keeping our progress going, so that that can be used as an exemplar for the rest of the region. So I'm happy with the progress, and I'll be happy to, obviously, at the end of the 3 years next year, to let you know where we are. The maternity incentive scheme, again, it's something that I've brought to this board meeting before. You'll remember that last year both of our trusts achieved all 10 safety actions, and I'm really happy to say that both of our trusts have achieved all 10 safety actions for a second year. The maternity incentive scheme and Saving Babies' Lives, which I'll come to in a moment, are both part of the national ambition to reduce maternal deaths, stillbirth and neonatal brain injury. The maternity incentive scheme, as I say, has 10 safety actions that the LMNS works really closely with our maternity providers to ensure that we're meeting those standards. We don't have the national picture yet for this year, but last year we know that nationally 92 out of 120 achieved it, and in the Southwest actually only 6 out of 13 achieved it. I'm expecting it will be a similar picture this year. So again, we really should be proud of our maternity services that for the second year they've achieved all of that. Year 7 has already been published, and we've already met as a system to make sure that we're on trajectory to do it again for year 7. There's not a huge amount of change to the scheme, so we're not anticipating any major issues with being able to be successful next year. Moving on to Saving Babies' Lives version 3, as I say, goes hand in hand with the maternity incentive scheme. It's there to help us achieve that national ambition of reducing maternal death, neonatal death and stillbirth. The Saving Babies' Lives is actually 69 interventions, all aligned to improving those outcomes. It's a massive piece of work, and both of our trusts have achieved a higher compliance than last year, which was what our goal was to do. We are working towards 100% compliance for next year, which should be within our grasp. One of the areas that we've recognised that we need to focus on is reducing smoking rates. So the Saving Babies' Lives, as I say, 69 interventions around 6 elements, and one of the elements is all around treating tobacco dependency and reducing smoking. Within BNSSG, we do have a fully recruited maternity-specific treating tobacco dependency team, which works across both MBT and UHBW. They've really developed as a team. They can now issue vapes and nicotine replacement therapy. And we've also developed a joint smoke-free pregnancy guideline. One of the things that we're considering looking at for this forthcoming year is whether we take part in the National Smoke-Free Pregnancy Incentive Scheme, and that hopefully will help us improve quit rates. It's something that a lot of the country have been taking part in. Is basically a financial incentive for women that are smoking in pregnancy to develop a timeline of when they think they can quit with support from the team. So there's a lot of work going on within the reducing smoking rates, but we know that's an area that we need to focus on for this forthcoming year. Going on, I know there's a lot to cover in this, so hopefully I'm not moving too fast, but the Equity and Equality Action Plan is, again, something that we're incredibly proud of, and you'll see within your packs, Appendix 2 is the Equity and Equality Highlight Report. Now, there's a lot in there, and I'm just going to touch on a couple of sort of key points, but some of you may remember that it was an NHS England requirement for all LMNSs to publish a specific Equity and Equality Action Plan on the ICB website, and we did that just a little over a year ago. And we have been really focusing, as I say, the golden thread for everything that the LMNS is doing is around that equity and equality agenda. So what we wanted to do with this highlight report was really bring together all the amazing work that's happening across the system, so that our maternity and neonatal providers can use that to show their trust boards all the good work that's happening, but also for us to be able to work with our ICB communications team to actually show our public that we said we were going to work on these 8 objectives, and this is actually where we're up to and what we're doing. So the report that I've shared with you won't be shared with the public. It's very wordy. That is really just to show exactly what's happening, but we will be working with the comms team to get an accessible version that will be able to be shared with our public, and our MMVP will be really involved with that. The main things that I wanted to pick out, just because I'm aware that it's a lot for you to read, but one of the priorities was about having intelligent data and data that we actually understand in maternity services. And we're currently working on creating a dashboard with both of our providers, which will have a real population health focus. So instead of just looking at numbers, and we get absolutely bombarded with numbers, we'll be able to actually interrogate that data and break it down by ethnicity, by IMD score, by postcode, to actually see where our outcomes are not as good and which populations that's affecting. And we are very close to having a dashboard that I'll be able to share with you. The first iteration is due this month in May. And again, we'll be the first LMNS/ICB to have a dashboard that will be able to be interrogated in that way in the Southwest. So again, it will be really exciting. And it's been a fantastic collaboration with our BI teams within the ICB, but also with the support of the BI teams within the trusts. The other couple of points from the highlight report that I just wanted to share with you is, again, one of our priorities was about making maternity care accessible for all. And just following on, Shane, from what you were saying about working with VCSE sector, we've worked really closely with Black Mothers Matter, which is one of our voluntary sector organisations, and following feedback from them that a lot of women that go to their groups don't feel that the antenatal education that we currently offer is fit for purpose. So we work really closely with them to develop a curriculum that was very much led by Black Mothers Matter. We do have midwives that attend various sessions, and the classes have now been running for nearly a year. We're just evaluating the programme, but the initial feedback from both healthcare professionals, but most importantly from women that have attended it, has been really excellent. And they've actually developed a set of resources that are specifically for Black women that are going into maternity services, with some of the fears that have been raised that actually can allay some of the fears. And it is a fantastic set of resources, which again, I'll talk about how we're going to share that. So that again, I think is something, how important it is that when you work with VCSE partners, you can really make a difference. We've also got an EDI lead within UHBW, within our maternity services, who attends an early pregnancy drop-in clinic, which is hosted by Refugee Women of Bristol. And that's specifically to support women to access maternity services in a timely way, because we recognise that there were various groups of our population that just didn't know when they should be accessing support from maternity services, and why would they if we don't get that message out. So that's been really, really positive. And from a North Bristol Trust specific point of view, they've just started an obstetric community satellite clinic in Patchway, and many of you will know that Patchway is an area of really high deprivation, and this is to support women making sure that they get that really good quality obstetric care without having to trek into the main hospital, and actually doing it in a place-based model. And they've also started a continuity model in Eastwood Park Prison, again, to make sure that women that are currently in Eastwood Park are getting the absolute gold standard of care, and having the same midwife come and see them regularly. So they were just a couple of bits that I wanted to pick out of there. There's obviously a lot of good news within that equity and equality action plan. And what we'll be working really closely with our MMVP is, again, that they are going out, speaking to our population, going to community groups and sharing this, so that hopefully it will start to improve public perception of maternity services.
Okay, thanks, Layla. Let me open it up to questions, but before we do, just to say thank you. That was really comprehensive. You've gone through that in a lot of detail for us and given us a clear understanding. Some really good news in there and some progress, and rightfully you should be proud of the work and everyone else that's been involved in it, because it really is a significant difference to other parts of the country. And then finally, just for me, the cutting of the data is really important, because we've done this as a region, talked about EDI, and we talked about this in the SHIP committee. But if we're not cutting the data to look at what disparity is, then we are things are hiding in plain sight, aren't they? They're happening to our minority communities, but we just don't see it for the wash of all the information. So I mean, that's really positive as well, that we're understanding the services we're providing. So let me open up to questions. So Jaya first.
Thanks, Chair. Just to reiterate, fantastic work, and totally agree that we should all be very proud of the achievements reported. Three points, I guess, in terms of how are there plans to track how women stay smoke-free after birth? It'd be really good to see how these things are tracked beyond, so that we can see the impact going through life. Noticed also that there was the offer of a SIM in order to allow women access to information. Have we joined that up with our VCSE partners? Because there are tech partners within the community that could also make sure that there's other facilities made available. And also, I guess I want to highlight again, this is a lifeboat issue. We've been talking about what we can carry through to ICB 2.0. How can we make sure that we're tracking the right metrics and making sure that nothing falls through the cracks between what we've got now and what we might end up as in a month or two?
Thanks, Jay. Leila, before you answer, there's a lot of hands up. So why don't I take all the points and questions and observations people have got, and then perhaps you can pick them up at the end. So if you want to make a note of the points people are making, John.
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks, Leila. I think this is a great achievement, and I really welcome the reflective nature of it and the absence of any complacency at all. I think performance and outcomes are really to be applauded. I just wanted to share some experience around independent assessment of MIS Year 6. I'm a NED on the Gloucester Foundation Trust Board, and its challenges are well publicised. So this year we opted to bring in the internal auditors to review the responses to the 10 questions and to test the robustness of the evidence base. And it was a really helpful learning process, and it was great to get that independent validation of the position. And I think as NEDs, we found that the outcomes were better than we were anticipating. And whilst I appreciate that this is more of a trust decision, I just kind of wanted to share the fact that it's something recent and really positive, and it'd be something I'd say to consider as an option for the future. I recognise, though, that you've talked about the independent scrutiny, the triangulation, and so on that you're getting. So it may not be necessary, but it was we certainly found it powerful and helpful. So I just thought I'd share.
Okay, thanks, John. Alice.
Thanks, Jeff. Leila, well done to you, and to everyone who works in the maternity services across the system. It isn't like this everywhere, and the whole point of you giving us triangulated evidence around maternity incentives, saving babies' lives, etc., is it makes high-risk clinical service as safe as it can be. So that's the point of this, giving us really good assurance. I so support the no complacency bit, because we do know that people could still get a worse deal when they're pregnant than other people in our population. So the focus that you've got on this is just great. And I wasn't going to say it as a lifeboat, but the big thing for me is how does the focus and the momentum continue into the new world? And it should do, because Maria, you have a huge amount of staff leading and working in this space. Dominic, you have people are working in this space all the time, but I just think we need to not lose what's clearly, and I still remember the presentation at the annual general meeting from Black Women Matter. So I think keeping this going is really important. So I just want to commend you and keep the focus. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. And you will have seen reported in HSJ, etc., the questions being asked around the emphasis on maternity. So it's a good point. Ellen?
Thanks, Jeff. Layla, can I just congratulate you and the teams that you're working with in the trusts and in the community for the work that you're doing. It's a comprehensive update, but so important and therefore needed. You've come to Outcomes, Quality and Performance Committee on a regular basis to update us. So I think we can take sort of full assurance on the work that you're doing. I did have one little question, and it's on your action plan. Given the very, very strong performance that you've just highlighted sort of across a number of areas, on reference 3.6 of your plan, you talk about an improvement in culture, but given the performance of the system and the improvements you've made, can you just say a little bit more about what that culture is that we need to focus on? Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Helen. So I'll go to Julie and then come back to you, Layla. So hopefully you made a note of the questions. I have as well. So if you haven't got them all, just shout. Julie.
Thanks, Jeff. Reiterate what everyone said, Layla. It's a great report and great results. And I suppose I just wanted to, a little bit of what Alison was hinting at, to say, I'm not sure. I know we have to report certain things, but I think this could be even better, because I'm thinking about our health visitors and the role that they play. And actually our maternity system has really brought them in much earlier. So then picking up, I think it was Jaya's point, things like smoke-free Jaya, they can then carry that on, particularly women who are smoking during pregnancy. And then what you were talking about, Layla, Black Maternity Matters, Black Mothers Matter, I think, you know, a significant, I can't remember the number now, but a significant number of our health visitors have now been through that training. And that links to Alison's point. I think it's indicative of how we have come together as a system and regularly through our discussions join things up. And I suppose that's the bit in everything. We've just got to be mindful we don't lose as we go through, because yeah, this is great. And then it carries on, Jaya, you know, post-birth, that's the nice, natural, seamless transfer, if you like, where those health visitors can carry on with many of those initiatives. Thanks, Layla.
Thanks, Julie. So lot in there, Layla. Some you can answer, you know, so I think the one on continued focus is a finger in the air. You can see lots of thanks and people very proud of the work that's being done here. But there's a few there. Jaya had 2 or 3 questions. John, about the work that's in Gloucestershire. The cultural challenge that Ellen's raised, what is that? And I think perhaps you can just give us a little bit of a summary on some of those. That'd be helpful.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, everyone. So the system working, just picking up on Julie and Jaya's point, is really, really important. So specifically around the smoking element, actually, if we get involved with the pregnancy incentive scheme, that actually really helps join that up. So that will be working with our local authority partners, and then we get support with actually continuing that intervention with those women, because like you say, it's not just about the pregnancy, it's about continuing afterwards. So actually, I think if we get involved in that, we're looking at it as a system with our local authority partners, and that will really help with that. I also just wanted to let everyone know we have a monthly L&S Equity and Equality meeting, and that's where we have our health visitors, we have primary care, we have our local authorities all coming together to talk about these issues. And like you say, Julie, I think it really does show how we're working well together. Black Maternity Matters is now a perinatal workforce. It's not just about midwives, it's about the whole team. I wanted to pick up on John's point. We have actually discussed whether we should have internal auditors for the MIS process. And that's really interesting, John, what you were saying about being involved in that. And I think as we move towards working more closely together, UHBW and MBT being part of a hospital group, I think actually we might really need to think about how we get that outside scrutiny. So we've discussed it previously and felt that because we've had the 2 organisations, and the LM&S brings together partners from both, as well as everyone that works in my kind of role as an independent person. But I'd really like to explore that, because I think any amount of scrutiny is always a good thing, and having those fresh eyes. Ellen, to come to your point around culture, I think culture is one of those things that is so hard to measure, and it really became a real focus for maternity in the Kirkup report, which some of you might remember was all around teams really working well together, having that trust, being able to safely escalate. And I think, unlike a lot of the things that we measure, you can clearly see, but culture often sits below that. So we're doing a lot of work with our leadership teams, our quads within our trusts, getting them to work together, train together. So I think for me, Ellen, it's around really strengthening the teamwork, being really assured that all members at every level of the team feel that they can escalate, that we have tools in place to help with that escalation, help with teams that are working together, knowing each other, knowing who they can go to. And I think there's a lot more work that we can do in that area. So that's why that really is a key focus. And then I'd just like to finish with saying that I think I'm going to say that maternity obviously is really important, but I really think it is. And I think we've achieved so much over the last few years that my worry is that with all of the changes and all of the everything that's happening, that the focus will shift. And I think that would be really sad, because I think that actually what we need to do is maintain that focus and maintain that scrutiny on making things better. And I'm confident that working with all of you will be able to do that. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Layla. That's brilliant. And we do know there's an indication that some of the money ring fence for maternity might not be there as we go forward. But, I think we're in a really good place for how we proceed. So fingers crossed it will be. But, we are entering into a very challenging period. But thank you for the update. Really brilliant. Any other comments or questions from anybody? So I don't think you're asking for any decisions. It was just by way of update, Layla, wasn't it? If something else you wanted. Okay,
no,
that's brilliant. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks for coming and speaking to us. Well done.
Thank you, everyone.
The next agenda item is the system-wide data sharing arrangement. I don't know if Kerry has joined us yet, though. I'm looking down the list. Kerry, if you're there.
Kerry is there.
Oh, you have joined us. Great. Okay. Okay, so over to you then. In Deb's absence, she would have probably passed you anyway, but the floor's yours.
Thank you, Jeff. I've got a few slides. I promise they're only brief. So I'll share those on the screen, if that's okay with everyone. Bear with me 1 second. It should be appearing now. So as that's coming up on the screen, I'm Kerry Darville. I'm the Intelligence Centre Programme Director, and I'm also the Deputy CIRO for the ICB. And just for everyone's benefit, the CIRO means I have oversight of all the information governance activities. So I've come to the meeting today to update you on the BNSSG information sharing charter, with some really positive news on progress, and to update you on the next steps. So this first slide is just quite a short summary of some of the opinions that I've heard since I've been in post. And I just thought it was a nice way of giving the context to some of the things I hear about the challenges with the current ways of working with information sharing. So I'll not read those out, but hopefully if you digest them, they will resonate with your own experiences and what you hear in your own services. So that's a lot of the rationale behind why we've done some work on introducing an information sharing charter. So the charter document itself is in with the papers. It is quite detailed, but we have tried to make it as understandable as possible. And the main way of describing the charter itself is that we're moving from a project-based way of sharing information between partners moving it up a level to being purpose-based. And I'll talk to you on the next slide about the benefits that that gives us with that change. So this slide, there's a lot more benefits, if I'm honest. There's quite a long list of benefits, but this slide will give you the key benefits that will give us as working as an integrated care system for introducing an information sharing charter and a new way of working. So again, I won't read all those out, but hopefully they're the types of benefits that you would expect to see from a simplification of processes and a new joint way of working. I'll keep moving forward. So in terms of where we've got to date, we've now got our established IG committee, our ICS IG committee, which is really well attended. I chair that one, and we have IG leads from across the ICS. We've worked through the rationale for this change. We've worked on data sharing processes, documentation together. Those IG leads have engaged their own organisations in this change. We've, in terms of where we are at the moment, we've now moved on to the approval stage. So we feel as IG leaders across our ICS that we're now ready to take that step forward to implementation. So you'll see at the bottom there, we're looking for approval today from the ICB board to move forward. And then the last 2 points there, the blue points, are around, we will continue to adapt the framework as we need to from using the charter itself. And we'll obviously manage all the activities that come along that need to be reviewed as part of the charter. So this approval stage today is really key for us for the way forward. This is the current position in terms of CSIRO approvals. All the organisations in the group, should I say, I've had that CSIRO approval through. The 3 on the right-hand side, I've been promised that they're imminent, and there's reasons why I haven't got those yet, but I'm literally on the cusp of getting those, and none of those 3 organisations have got any issues. It's about the logistics of sending their approvals through. So we're in a really positive place regarding that. So the next steps, if everyone is supportive of moving forward today, we've drafted the request to go out to each GP practice. And what we intend to do is send that out with a note from GPCB. I've been to GPCB and they're supportive of this change. And we've also got an assurance statement from the Data Protection Officer for primary care to help explain what the change is and give that assurance that the IG expertise and GPCB are supportive of this change. I've also drafted an email to go out to chief execs that will ask for support for membership. And I would ask for it if anyone's on the call from primary care or from providers. The request will come out from a data protection mailbox, not from myself, but please keep your eyes out for that because it's key that we get these back. And then after that, we're working on some wider stakeholder communications that will go out via the usual communications routes. And then we'll start working on the first DPIA, which is about direct care. There'll only be a small number of DPIAs that sit under this information sharing charter principle. And that's it from me.
Okay, thanks, Kerry. And I know this was well discussed and debated at the Finance and Digital and Estates Committee last week. And one of the questions I asked you there was, should we pause on this in light of the system changes, or should we continue? And I think there was resounding support for continuing with the approach we're taking. So thank you. I'll open up to questions if I can. So Jaya, first of all.
Thanks, and thanks so much for that report. I always find the data side of things really exciting, but that's because I'm a bit of a geek. I just wondered, actually, I know that there's change afoot, but because we're transforming into a strategic commissioning body, I did wonder whether or not this was fit and ready for being built into the procurement of services, so ensuring partners are contractually required to share data. Do you think we can make this, this data sharing obligation industrial action proof, for example? And I'm also thinking of POD and how we build it in there.
Yeah, do you know, I just mentioned about the data processing impact assessments that sit underneath that. Each of those purpose-based ones, the one that is relevant to what you've just said, we would need to make sure when we draft that takes that into account. So definitely yes.
All right, absolutely great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jaya. Shane?
Yeah, it's not so much a question, Jeff. It's just a statement of support, really. If we are to be a strategic commissioner, and our job is understanding the population and then being able to design in partnership with others new services based on really good information, this is simply fundamental to the future of an ICB. And I don't want, I mean, I used to be a CIRO in a previous life, and I just want to state the amount of work that has gone into getting all partners to this place is truly remarkable, Jeff. It's I think people think it might be something in the back room just signing a few forms. This is culturally really difficult, as well as procedurally really difficult. And Kerry and the team have managed this really well. And I just want to put that on record, because actually this is one of the key enablers we will have to being a successful ICB into the future. And it's cultural and procedural.
Yeah, thanks, Shane, and thanks for that endorsement. And we discussed this at Fed about some of the frustrations that Kerry has experienced in taking this forward, but that's nothing new in this space. We do know that. However, if we can get things over the line, we can make a significant difference here. The principle is absolutely right. It's the detail that people sometimes struggle with. But Ellen and then Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, and thanks, Kerry. As Shane said, I mean, the sheer hard work and the resilience that you're going through and getting everyone to sign this is excellent. At Outcomes Quality and Performance Committee, I think data is raised at least 3 times, sort of at each meeting. So my question is always a practical question. When will we see? So I know you're going through all the hard work now. When will we see? When will we be at the time where people are able to share and functions are able to share data between each other? And I know that will probably be a stepped process, but when will people on the ground start to see the action taking place? Thanks.
I think stakeholders will notice it when it's the next initiative that will take through the process. And it's that experience of a new piece of work that will feel different. So I've got to get those DPIAs in place first, like I mentioned, the purposes. But there's only a few of those. So that's when it will feel very different. Because if you imagine what usually happens with a new initiative, a new service development, people start from scratch on information sharing. And it will be that'll feel much quicker. And not just quicker, but safer. Because partners have agreed to share as a principle.
And what about current processes that might really benefit from data sharing now? And I think I seem to remember a while ago health visitors and GPs and that kind of thing. So will there be any benefits for current processes?
There will, if we can make sure that those processes fit under the purposes. That's what this is about. You've got to make sure that they align. If they do align, we can get that, say if it's health visitors, to agree we're going to work now underneath the principles of the charter.
Okay.
Definitely. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Kerry. Steve?
Yeah, just to reinforce the sheer work that's gone into this has been phenomenal, and getting the sign up across has been an amazing thing to see, because we started in a very different place. So again, Kerry, well done to you and the team. One of the things that we did say was that the document itself, we need to find a simpler way of being able to shift some of the culture piece. So we did talk at Fed about how do we take this and maybe just make it simpler for audiences, just to get the buy-in. And the other thing that I did think about afterwards was where where you've got interactions with, and I'm going to use the universities as one, where we've got significant flow possibilities in terms of public health, but also in terms of mental health and well-being. And sometimes data sharing from outside the family is quite difficult.
Mm.
If we could look at that a bit further down the line, that would be hugely helpful, I think.
And I'll be honest in my response to that, because I was obviously the CIO at AWP, and I was the digital lead for mental health, the community mental health services developments. So I'll be honest, Steve, I've had that in my mind as we've been developing this. So that is an area that will benefit massively from this way of working.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Kerry. Thanks, Steve. Any other questions or comments for Kerry, and anyone who's not happy for us to talk about approving the information strategy, the sharing charter? Jacob.
Thank you. Just to again say thank you for all the hard work that you've put behind the scenes. So personally, I'm a big advocate of this piece of work, and having that framework there and the assurance and governance that sits behind it is very reassuring. You've put a huge amount of effort in engaging with through membership forums and with practices. I think that is really helpful. And certainly the GPCB as a board are very happy to support this as a principle. And if it becomes difficult when it gets to the practice level of sign up, if there are certain practices who have further questions, very happy to support that conversation if helpful.
Thank you. That's great.
Thanks, Jacob. That's really useful. Anything for anybody else before I move us on? Okay, Kerry, thank you for your time. Really comprehensive update. I know how hard you've worked on this. And I know it's like drawing teeth sometimes, but it's for a greater good, as Shane has said. And if we can get this delivered, it's a massive enabler for everything else we do. So thank you very much. Really positive.
Thanks.
Okay, Dave, over to you then on intensive and assertive community mental health services review. We'll take this item, then just have a 5-minute break if we can, and then we'll just do the updates on committees before we conclude. So, Dave, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm joined by Neil Turney and Eva Dietrich from AWP today for any points of clarification on this update. Colleagues will remember that we brought an update on the Assertive Outreach review and programme back in January. We are mandated by NHS England to continue to update the boards publicly on the progress that is being made, and hence the paper being here today. I have just got a couple of slides. I'll take the paper as read, but the slides hopefully just draw your attention to the progress that has been made. So just bear with for a sec. Shane, I can see you, so if you just give me a nod that a presentation is showing.
The presentation is showing, but it's not on presentation. It's not on presentation mode, Dave.
Okay. All right. Bear with.
Yep, that's it.
Hopefully that's better. Colleagues will remember NHSC instructed all ICBs to review intensive and assertive outreach services following the tragic events in Nottingham in 2023. We completed that review last September and reported progress to this board in January. One of the key areas that was noted in that review was a discrepancy between DNA policy and practice. As I say, we've been asked to continue to publicly update the boards on this, on the programme and the progress that's being made. In addition to that, colleagues may well also be aware of the nationally published guidance from NHS England in February called the Independent Mental Health Homicide Report, which was the independent review following the incident in Nottingham. And we've now been asked to consider that report and continue to build on our existing actions and progress with the findings of that report. And we'll have concluded that by the end of June. And we're asked to continue to reflect on that. As I say, we were asked to update the board by the end of June, but in the spirit of transparency and timeliness, we wanted to bring that forward to today to make sure that the board were fully sighted on the progress that was being made. In terms of the progress that is being made, I will just hand over to Neil, just to summarise those key findings and next steps, and then we'll close for questions.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you, Dave. So yeah, pick that up on slide 3 and looking at the progress findings and next steps. So in terms of progress, we came back here in January and we talked about this discrepancy between DNA policy and practice, and we have now done a deep dive into did not attend to understand that difference between what happens in practice and policy, to identify learning and the improvements required. So you'll see it in the paper, but to summarise, that audit identified a number of cases within a 3-month period where the reason for discharge was noted as did not attend. So that was what was entered on the patient record system, and AWP looked at a whole range of patients and picked out ones that they felt would match what we would describe as the assertive outreach profile. So it's the individuals who've got particularly complex needs who are really who are the focus of the scope of this review. So what that deep dive analysis has shown is that in all the cases, a multidisciplinary team approach to discharge was taken and rapid access plans were in place. So as such, what should have happened did happen and was in place. In most of those cases, patients would not be considered complex, or the patient had recovered, was typically well, and that would include patients who had mental capacity to choose not to engage, and that was the right thing. That was the right approach taken for those patients. And in a small number of cases, higher vulnerability was identified, and that could lead to increased risk of relapse. So though the audit did not identify any cases where patients should not have been discharged, nevertheless improvements can be made and risk can be reduced further. So whilst it's not impossible to completely eliminate risk, we do want to say that in the context of caseload sizes, the number of cases identified for further review is very low, and only a subset of those cases audited was it the case that further planning for relapse could have been improved and could have been shared more widely. So as a result of that, 2 risks are identified in the paper and risk mitigations have been developed. Risk 1 is around the improvements that can be made to our current did not attend policy and approach to discharge. So those mitigations include clinical staff will use a new discharge checklist, and that will be in place very shortly. MDT approaches to discharge will continue to be adopted for all people who would fall under this population cohort. A new non-engagement policy has been created to reflect these new processes, and a discharge checklist will be prioritised to be developed and put on the electronic patient record system. So that's RIO. The audit will be taken again in 3 months' time with the same methodology, and we'll look at the impact of those changes and whether that's been successful in further reducing the risk. The second risk is around the ability to fully identify individuals who fall into this population cohort. Work is underway to progress that as well, very much a data-led initiative, and the plan is to have a series of patient parameters which will effectively flag patients that would require additional sort of support and be able to identify those through the patient record system. Colleagues at AWP are talking to Nottinghamshire about how they've managed to do that and what they've put in place to enable that to happen, and that is currently expected to be in place by Q2 of this year. So those risks are now added to our risk log, and they will go through our relevant governance committees to ensure oversight and progress. We will continue to, we've now got actions and timelines for all the actions, so we'll continue to iterate that plan and make progress over the rest of the year with regular reporting. And the review, the guidance and the CQC findings all really highlight that to effectively support this patient group, it does require a whole systems approach between AWP, the VCSE providers, primary and community care. And our co-production was a really big part of how we developed our improvement plan. So once we've put those national learning into our plan, and the timeline for that is the end of June, we will aim to go back and do a wider piece of co-production and check and challenge with wider stakeholders. That will include families, carers, the voluntary sector, general practice, to talk about the progress we've made and also hear back from partners about how that's been received on the ground. And that will also give us, I think, a further indication as to the progress we're making and the areas we might need to continue to have focus in. So thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Neil. So Eve, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. Jeff, one thing I did want to note is we've said when we last met that we'd embed the oversight of this programme within the OQPM governance. We haven't been able to do that this time formally, though we did meet with Alison and Ellen last week, but we will. It was just in terms of the timeliness of meetings, but that is where we will sit the kind of general overview of this assurance of this programme moving forward. But we did just want to update the board today on those key progress and next steps. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Dave. And the recommendations on the paper point us towards noting what progress is being taken. So can I just ask if people have got any comments or questions for Dave or the team? Ellen.
Yeah, can I just thank Neil in particular for the work and the team involved in this, and Dave too. We had a really constructive meeting, I think, Alison and myself and Neil and Dave. And it's good to see that some of the feedback's been taken on board, and I support the work that you've done and that you've looked into those areas that we highlighted. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Ellen. Steve.
So this is just a question really from many years ago. We used to regionally undertake mental health homicide reviews independently at regional levels that fed into a national system, or tried to fill into a national system to get learning across the sector, the whole system nationally. Is that still, does that happen when the regions were dismantled? Did that go to an HSE region? Because they were independent reviews. I used to chair them, so I know them quite intimately, and I'm not sure what happened to them.
So pass from me. Neil?
Oh, I was going to say, so that is one of the things that's on the action plan, that there needs to be better coordination between learning from serious incidents and these reviews, and that coming into how we work as ODGs and how we make strategic decision making, sort of plan services. So we've got an action around that, and we will audit the progress on that. But that is an area that needs to be improved, and we're aiming to do that in the first instance by ensuring that quality colleagues in the ICB are passing all that over into our what we call our service delivery unit meeting, and that will go up into ODG and be part of our discussion. We'll need to check that happens, but we've taken the first step to trying to strengthen that process.
Steve,
Okay,
I think it's
offline,
a good. Steve, I think it's a good question.
It'd be good to have a conversation. Yeah,
I think it's a good question, and one actually is at the centre of what we do here as an ICB, because I guess most of us have had independent reviews. The first line is normally we haven't communicated well across partners, and that's as long as I've been in public services, which is far too long. But it's always a common theme, and we always commit to getting it right in the future, and often we don't. So how we do that is worth puzzling through. Okay, thanks. Anything else to add, Steve? I know you've got to leave us.
Happy to work offline if that's going to be useful to look at.
Okay, Kevin.
Thanks, Dave. Neil, really good to see you. Just a reflection. I thought the report and the presentation in the pack was really comprehensive. There was one thing that stood out to me, which was, and you've reiterated there, that people who were discharged because they did not attend were discharged correctly within the policy and within procedures. I think one thing that has always stood out to me is that for our most vulnerable individuals, some of those discharges mean if you're 15 minutes late. And I would just be really keen to be involved and for Healthwatch to be involved to understand if those are the parameters as by which vulnerable clients are discharged. They may not be, but be keen to explore that more.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Eva, did you want to come in on this point?
I'm happy to come in. I think, Kevin, it's a good point, because I know engagement is daily business in mental health, and it's many things. There are people who have the capacity and ability to choose not to engage, and then there are people who actually maybe struggle to engage and need a different approach, need to have a more relational approach, need a much more personalized approach, or many other reasons, or it's an indicator for someone becoming unwell, which is also something which shouldn't make us to deny someone who denies or comes late. I would say what the audit has shown, there was not, and it's only the audit, and I hope it's representing what's going on. I don't think that anybody is discharged by having one appointment not attended. Sometimes we have a situation where we really struggle to engage with in many ways to see the people. And what we then expect and what is happening is that our staff go and try to understand why someone is not engaging, has an MDT meeting, discuss what else can be done. And then if the only solution is to discharge this person, then you have to have a kind of communication with other parties who are involved with the service user and the family. I don't know if you, I don't know if something else may, I can't rule out 100% that everything is always done to the dot, but just because you not come to one appointment should never be a reason to be discharged. And that's what we try to do by creating a flagging system for the most vulnerable people. So if someone doesn't come, that doesn't mean just send another letter. It means call the person, call the family, call the GP or whatever potentially you can do to reach out to this person. And if so we try to really tighten up and helping our staff with clear guidelines what to do, because you're absolutely right, the people who not engage are often the most vulnerable people.
Thanks, Ava. Jacob?
Thanks. Just wanted to add my support, I guess, really to Ava, what you were saying around that flagging of individuals. So the frustration in general practice is what is the person that most needs the help doesn't go to the appointment, they're not known to your services, so you can't make any assessment of risk, and that we're still holding them in general practice and primary care. But we know there's still a significant concern there, and vice versa. You are seeing people who you want to, or not seeing people who you want to be, who you're concerned about. And I think having those informal, or trying to formalize some of those informal knowledge that we have between us, so that it's not going back to the beginning of the waiting list, so that if you
Absolutely.
haven't seen somebody, that we are aware. We get lots and lots of DNA letters from all sorts of specialties, and flagging the ones that you're concerned about that we should be doing more, and then having an easy way to get them back into your service or access that. So I think as a team and through mental health leads within primary care, we're really keen to try and make that loop better.
Absolutely. You may, I'm sorry for jumping in, but yes, absolutely. You need to have a rapid access plan. If you discharge someone who is in the assertive outreach category because you have no other choice, it doesn't make sense that this person goes through the whole referral process. That really should be bridged. Absolutely right. Yeah. And that's what we try to achieve.
Thanks, Ava. Thanks, Jacob. Jaya.
Thank you. This may have been said, but I've been having dodgy issues, so maybe I missed it. But with the data aspect, the local data and sharing, is this tied in with the work that we're already doing that we talked about with system-wide data? And I guess this has got to be like a systems-wide effort in order to aggregate data so that we can react properly. My other question was whether or not the work on sort of the EDI aspect was linked in with our own BCSE Alliance to reach into communities, just to join the dots.
Thank you. So I think we will work with the BCSE Alliance with the EDI data. BCSE Alliance have been involved in the review, and then providers and people who are part of that alliance are very much part of providing the services as well. So some of that will take time, but is in motion. I wasn't here for the system-wide data discussion, but I can pick that up with Dave offline, and we can make the connections. Yeah, make the connections required. Eva.
Yeah, just to come in here, I guess, so what we try, so we have a oversight group for BNSSG now, where we meet with system partners who provide, like VCSE partners like Second Step and St. Mango's, who provide also service in this area, so that we actually work much more collaborative. And also, if we would have to discharge, let people know who see, and the other way around, that St. Mango sees sometimes homeless people and build relationships, but they can, the goal is that they have maybe access to some specialist input as well. So it's trying to use the existing resources in a more collaborative and joined up way, and also to train each other, so learning from each other's, and so that is a group which has just started to operate.
Thank you, Eva.
Thanks, Ava. Any other comments or questions? No, okay. So thank you everyone for the update. That's really helpful. A lot of detail in there. Quite a few challenges to go back and to look into for yourself, Neil, I think. But yeah, well done. Thanks very much. Dave, anything else you want to say before we conclude?
No, as I say, we'll keep that under the assurance lens of OQPM over the next few months and be back here in December.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. By me, it's 2:05. So should we just take 10 minutes and come back at 3:15, and we'll conclude with the updates from committees if we can. So if you are staying online, can you just remember to turn your camera and your microphone off? Thanks. See you in 10 minutes.
Julie? I was going to say, I was seeing Julie twice then. Yeah. I don't know whether it was just me.
Seeing me twice? Well, you can't see enough of me, Ellen.
I know, I'm probably hallucinating. Do you know that?
Perhaps it's double vision.
It's the hot weather in Wales.
We can help.
Thanks, Julie.
Okay, thank you, everyone. It's 15:15, so I'll get us going again if I can. So we'll run through the updates from the standing agenda items from committees. So Ellen, perhaps I can start with you.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so at March Outcomes Quality and Performance Committee, we considered a number of items in addition to the normal performance and quality reports. I'd bring Dave in at the end to update on any key performance items that he feels we need to be aware of. We had a number of reports and discussions on some significant areas: research strategy, heart failure pathway, healthcare, associated infections, and safeguarding, amongst others. But there were probably two very important updates. One was on the stroke pathway, and secondly on no criteria to reside and flow. And I think key messages from the committee would be that despite the first class system-wide work on flow and no criteria to reside, it still remains a challenge. So we're at 20% with a target of 15. But there is a great deal of work that Greg Pennington, as part of Dave's team, has been undertaking together with Sirona and the trusts to really drill down to the root cause of some of the issues. So we also heard from the stroke pathway. So we had Andy Clark, Operational Director, and Phil Clatworthy, who's the Consultant Stroke Neurologist at NBT. And they provided an extremely valuable update about the challenges and actions related to the stroke pathway, which were in line with some of the challenges on no criteria to reside. So together, I think the message was loud and clear that we do have some challenges, but there is a lot of work currently in train to address these. Some of the messages that they highlighted to us is that the level of no criteria to reside in stroke takes the acute occupancy to consistently 40% above what was planned for. So they are really challenged. The level of discharges to the stroke subacute rehabilitation unit are not at the level assumed in planning. The largest category of no criteria to reside, again, is part of that rehabilitation unit, transferring into that. And what I'd say was it really valuable bringing together of groups of people and functions to look at a specific issue. And I think it was particularly interesting for Dave and his team to hear again of the challenges of one particular part of the acute setting. And Dave and other members of the team agreed to take that away and follow up on some of the challenges there. In terms of no criteria to reside specifically, we heard again about the great work that Greg is undertaking. Greg's part of Dave's team. It's a revised study to understand the root cause of some of the flow issues within BNSSG. And I think Greg and the team are now at sort of a point where they have identified two sort of weaknesses. One is within P2 and P3, length of stay being too long when compared to the national picture. And as a result of that, there are a series of initiatives in place to address that. And also, there is some really good work to introduce a pathway 0+, which is going to be sort of a step down from P1, which might improve flow as well. I think what I would say is that as a committee, we need to be robust on evaluation of these initiatives and taking that assurance from that. But also, Jeff, I think, and Shane, is that there's some really good work going on. And we have been talking about this for 2 years or 3 years, and I'm sure before my time as well. But it would be, I think it's really important that we don't lose the work that we're currently doing in some of the changes that are going on at the moment. So that's probably the one thing that I would probably highlight. So there's really good system work going on. I'm sure sort of others could come in and probably talk about it, but we felt assured that there was some really good work, and we just need to keep an eye on it going forward. Dave, I don't know whether you want to come in just to add anything or anything on performance.
Thank you, Alan. So I'll just build on what you've just done. I won't go into more detail, but just to note the stroke input was really helpful at the OQPM session, and we have subsequently engaged with the stroke programme in re-embedding that that programme and their challenges within our urgent care governance. And I've met with Phil Clapworthy separately as well to do that. So that is now kind of part and parcel. As the programme itself winds down, we've now embedded it within BAU governance. And I think, Ellen, what I just wanted to add to your intro is the work that the team are leading is a truly, Greg might be pulling the strings and putting it together, but it's a truly multi-system effort. A group of senior leads from all of the organisations represented here are working with Greg, including our local authority partners, and is really getting to that level of understanding and granularity that we've not had before. So I want to thank all partners for their input into that. And I think the other element that the team have got under the skin of is we talk about the solution to this being discharge to assess. It's only half the problem when we look at no criteria to reside. And so looking at those patients that aren't discharged on a D2A pathway is critical to this, as well as looking at those patients that we can support in the community without going into hospital in the first place. So we're really looking across that whole pathway, but with a level of understanding and detail of what sits underneath of those pathways that we've not had before. So, Alan, that's what I want to say on no criteria. So in terms of performance generally, we're kind of a month into the new year. No key areas for escalation or awareness at this point. We remain on track. Obviously, really on a month in with our standards for the year. So nothing else really to report this month, Ellen.
Okay, that's it then, Jeff.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Ellen. And I think, Ellen, there'll be a common theme throughout the updates from committees about the work that people are putting in and the effort they're putting in when they're shrouded by significant uncertainty about their futures and the future of the organisation. And actually, our job as non-exec directors is to keep looking at the performance of the organisation and keep that going as best we possibly can. That's really hard for people, but I have to say everything I've seen, and I mentioned this morning, from the exec team down, is very positive, and people are keeping focused on what we're here to do, and we're here to provide the best possible services we can to the public. So, and I know that might sound like mother and apple pie. It's not. That's our job to make sure that's done. So, yeah, thanks for the update. That was really helpful.
Thank you.
Unless there's any questions, Jaya.
Thank you, Jeff. So at our most recent meeting, workforce elements of the 25-26 operation plan, they've been submitted alongside the wider plan, and our committee received the specific workforce details and targets. So the focus still remains on meeting the rate card for medical temporary staffing and monitoring staffing numbers in line with the efficiency plan. So still carrying on regardless of whatever is happening up at national level. The committee received the annual report and evaluation of the GP training hub for 24-25. This highlighted significant success in the expansion of training places and a high level of satisfaction on the training development offer to non-clinical primary care staff. The strategic workforce oversight still continues to focus on one workforce activity, specifically around workforce agility and ability to work across organisational boundaries, including the skills passporting. This group is also leading on the establishment of the process to support implementation of a pan-organisational redeployment process to support organisational change at this point, and especially on retention of talent. Once again, I just wanted to say that the level of professionalism from Joe and the team during this time of huge changes remains outstanding. And whatever the ICB 2.0 looks like, the workforce lens across the system has significant value, and we need to see whether or not we can keep that going regardless of what the boundaries are of our strategic commissioning remit.
Okay. Thanks, Jaya. Joe, anything to add?
Jeff, I don't know whether you can see me, Chair, or can hear me. I'm having problems with Teams. It's stopped working, but can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. In that case, then, no, nothing more to add. Just thank you for that additional comment there, Jaya. The People Programme Board, which is our governance line direct across the system, as a part of the People Committee, has been extremely supportive and immensely supportive, and is fully committed to carrying on the system work as we go through this year. And as our team has to turn and face, certainly within the ICB, to supporting organisational change and staff. So yeah, just to say thank you for that, and the work will continue. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Jaya. Any comments or questions for Joe or Jaya? Okay. In the absence of Steve then, because he's had to leave us, and Deb's not with us, it's over to you, Sarah. Perhaps maybe an update on some of the headlines from Finance, Estates and Digital.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Jeff. So you've got there in the report the month 12 finance report, which I think the main observation we had at Finance Committee is there wasn't any really significant surprises in there, because although we've had some movements, it was all stuff that was trailed as part of risks and mitigations. It's just the crystallisation of that at the year end. So we have achieved the sort of break-even position, both in the organisation, but also across the whole system. And, you know, it's a real testament to all of the work that everybody's done. We recognise that it is still a really challenging outlook, and we had a really good presentation at the last committee from UHBW. So Stuart Walker and Neil Kemsley came and presented that. This is a programme that we've got going, which is really just fed on behalf of the whole board, making sure that we're all assured in terms of that delivery that we discussed earlier as part of the operational plan, in terms of board arrangements in place to oversee that. So, but really good assurance from that presentation this month. Jeff, there wasn't anything else. Obviously, the accounts have been prepared on this basis and are currently with the auditors for their review, which will go through Audit and Risk Committee. So that's all I wanted to highlight.
Thanks, Sarah. And what you've just updated on is not insignificant, is it? I think for us to have achieved that as a system is outstanding. I mean, it really is. And I sat through the presentation from Stuart and Neil, and I think they saw the value in that as well as those part of the committee, which demonstrates how we're working as a partnership. So just very positive. Sorry I interrupted you.
That's all right. I was just going to highlight that it is probably worth noting, because there are a number of organisations that show as break even across the country, but a lot of those have had what's called deficit support funding. BNSSG as a system is one of 10 that didn't receive any deficit support funding and achieved break even, so in the top quartile. So I think it is just worth noting that it is really positive.
Yeah, and it comes from a very challenging backdrop, doesn't it? You know, so yeah, well done to everybody. I think it's really good, and I think, you know, you particularly have steered that very, very well across the system. So thank you, Sarah. Any questions for Sarah on Finance, Estates or Digital? No? Okay, great, thank you. Primary care then, Alison.
Thanks very much, Jeff. You've got the minutes from the February meeting, which I gave a verbal update last time, so I won't go into those. We did have a meeting on the 22nd of April. As always, and I think I've said before, the written reports and the verbal briefings were of a really high standard, which allowed committee to focus on what it needed to focus on. And there were 4 points I just wanted to pull out, nothing to escalate, but just to pull out for board's information. One is we had an excellent presentation on Pharmacy First by Richard Brown, who is the Chief Officer of the Local Pharmaceutical Committee. And Pharmacy First is a national programme with 3 elements in it, 2 that have been around for a while, but a new third one, which is around clinical pathway consultations that they all came in together at the beginning of January last year. And in terms of performance, BNSSG ICB is the highest performing ICB in the country in terms of Pharmacy First. So this is where pharmacies can take referrals either from individuals or practices or anybody, and they care and treat for people appropriately, and they also release a slot where someone might have been seen by either a GP or at a hospital. So highest performing. In March, for example, over 12,000 people used the service in BNSSG. About 76% we heard were cared and treated for and discharged and didn't go on somewhere else. About 15% went on. So we had some really good assurance around not just performance, but what came through from Richard is the ambition for the opportunities of how pharmacy can help out more. So it really was, and I don't want to steal his thunder, because I think in the action log for the board last time it says that this is going to be a seminar item, so I won't go into lots of detail, but it was a really excellent presentation. The currently there are about 30 practices who are referring about 5 people on average a day, which is freeing up 5 slots at a GP practice, 1 GP practice per day. And I think Richard's joint working with the LMC and One Care, etc., that could be quite significant if all practices were able to pick that up. So it was an excellent presentation. It gave us really good assurance both on performance, tick the box, but actually more importantly the ambition to do better. So that was really good. Just a couple of other things to pick up. We always get a report from the Primary Care Operational Group, which is really the engine room of delivery for primary care and developments. And there was one particular decision made about a local enhanced service around teledermatology, which Joe Medhurst updated us on, which was pretty exciting and different to what's been touted before. Joe may or may not want to come in on that, but it was a really good practice that we saw. We had quite a detailed item on the new GP contract, probably slightly more detailed than committee probably needed to know. But what we did have was a real sense that there is an investment going into primary care. Shaba was there from the LMC. I think her view is it's not enough and they're still having national negotiations. So I think there's this tension, but we did see some investment going into primary care, and particularly the focus on advice and guidance to improve connectivity between primary care and secondary care, big push on that. And also for patients, the development of a new patient charter, which is going to set out very explicit standards that patients should expect from their practice, and that's got to be written on the practice website. But there's a lot in the contract, but it was good to have an update. The update we had on the pharmacy contract nationally is it wasn't definite, but I asked the question, will the new pharmacy contract negate the risk of any collective action in pharmacy? I think, Dave might come in with some more up-to-date information, but Richard wasn't sure at that point whether it would negate it. Things might have moved on. But it was
has
good
now
to...
been negated, Alison.
It's now been negated. So
meeting. Yeah.
Perfect. Great. That's really good. And then the final thing is that there is a national programme to increase primary dental care for under an urgent setting. And what we saw was a framework developed, and it's been through the executive team and PCOG, and we had really good assurance on the system and processes in place. BNSSG have got to provide an extra 19,000-ish urgent dental appointments this year. There were various options that Dave presented that made the executive come up with a preferred option and decision-making framework, and lots of risks involved with all of them, but actually it was good to see the assurance around how they got to the point of decision-making, and mobilisation for that new 19,000 is the 1st of June. So lots of work going on in all of the areas around primary care, medical and pod at the moment. And that was all I wanted to say. Joe, did you want to say anything about teledermatology at this point?
I can do, again, happy to take questions on it. So just a brief outline on what it is. So the teledermatology project is to look at the rapid access to skin cancer diagnosis. And I think it was an interesting piece of work. And I've been sort of reflecting as we talk about what can we learn in a slightly deeper way about how we've worked together and what worked. And what I noticed when I started here 2.5 years ago was everyone had made improvements, but within their own organisational construct. And actually, primary care and general practice wasn't part of that discussion. So MBT and UHBW had unilaterally done improvements, different quality improvements to improve the pathway, because if people remember, we were not doing well in our cancer targetry, a lot of which was driven by the dermatology numbers because of the high volume. And so what it needed was to bring people together into a room and have a conversation and bring everyone back, the clinicians and the managers, to do the right thing for the patient, use technology to innovate and disrupt the pathways, and make sure across the pathway that included community, general practice and our VCSE colleagues. And the result was a new pathway using Casio cameras, where healthcare assistants in general practice on a PCN footprint can take pictures of these skin cancers or query skin cancers, send them across. And we're now seeing 60 to 70% of them are being signed off there, and this isn't cancer. That patient doesn't go anywhere. Their case is closed. It's allowing our dermatologists to do Act at the top of their license. So it was a really good collaborative piece of work, but there are some real lessons about the principles of how you get pathway shift to happen. And there were winners and losers in that, and the acutes were great because they bent and adapted and gave things up to allow their pathway to work. And the Swag Cancer Alliance, led by Maria, enabled it all because they gave us the funding to get some project support so we could do it and some clinical leadership. So all in all, a really good system piece of work. And again, I just tell that story to show sort of how collaboration works in a system. It's multifactorial, multi-age, but it's all of us being in that room together is the key step that sort of initiated that change. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Alison. And I mean, I think that's a really important point. And it comes to Shane's update at the start and the Chief Exec's update, which is the system convening in the absence of an ICB who's got, you know, a chief medical officer who's got a responsibility for that. Where does it sit? Because who convenes that conversation? Who does the administration of it? Who drives it forward? Or do we just shrink back into our own organisations? And that, you know, that is being replicated across the work we're doing in BNSSG, but it doesn't happen by itself. And so I think it's a question for me and Shane to be taken into our conversations with the region about how do we make sure things don't get worse and get better from the work that we've done, and who's going to be doing it, because that's a really, really critical point. And it really is a demonstration of stuff that you would think is very obvious, but just doesn't get done unless someone's got a responsibility. Thanks, Joe. I mean, it's a really good point. It will touch on some of the stuff that I'm going to update now on in the health inequalities, but let me just take any questions here first. So, Jaya.
Just a quickie. I've already had a wee discussion with Alison about there being a need to focus on optometry in the same way that we're looking now at dentistry. And having spent some time in the eye hospital A&E, I wondered, well, for a non-emergency eyeball situation, actually, I wondered when optometry would start to come into view. Sorry, puns all intended.
So, Jay, hi, it's Dave. It is coming into view this year. We recognise it's the last of the pod services that we've had the opportunity to really think about. Clearly, we'll have to do that in alignment and in balance with the changes that are about to be upon us. But it is definitively within our work plan to engage more in opportunities in community ophthalmology this year, and we have good engagement from the LOC in doing so.
Fabulous. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Jaya. Ruth.
Yeah, just to say there's huge appetite from our local optometry committee actually in terms of the emergency eye urgent eye pathway. We're one of the very few areas in the country that doesn't have something with our community optometrists. So there's great opportunity there.
I see what you did there.
Thanks, Ruth. Any other questions around primary care? No? Okay, thank you. Strategic Health Inequality Prevention Population Health Committee, SHIP. The last meeting we had, again, huge amounts of enthusiasm there, and there was 2 substantive items, and I'll bring Joe in a second. The first one's around the ICB changes and the impact that might have, and then the second one's around a presentation from Gemma on the 2040 strategy. So the first discussion obviously left people feeling a bit deflated about the progress we made, the focus we were making. But Joe reminded the group that actually strategic commissioning around health inequality is going to be absolutely critical. So it's an important part of what we do going forward. And that gave more relevance, I think, to the conversation then around the 2040 strategy. So actually, it'd be very easy, wouldn't it, to be thinking about what's happening today and tomorrow without looking ahead. And I think it was a lead into that conversation, which got us back into thinking a bit more strategically. But I do think the work of that group cuts across all of our committees, and it's an important part. So we talked earlier about how we're cutting data, and I think there's some really good work ongoing in the SHIP about that, how that's being done. But Joe, anything else you'd add to that?
No, I think it was just fascinating as we did the 2040 lens. I mean, I think you commented, Jeff, that Gemma might have been slightly sort of shell-shocked as she left, because there was just, because it's a much more diverse group, and actually I think nearly half a non-public sector. So there's just different views, diversity of views, diversity of challenge. That is nothing but helpful, all done in a very constructive way, but allowed maybe some other questions to be considered. And I think maybe one of the things I was struck with is, as we do this work, you can get very reductionist in how you see humans. And of course, humans aren't that, are they? We're complex beings with complex family, social groups. And I think just that check and challenge about, hang on a minute. And I think we've had comments earlier about where communities flow and how communities connect, because actually we're not on local authority boundaries. So some of that human viewpoint is extraordinarily valuable and helps. It doesn't change the thinking, but I do think it makes it richer. And so I'm very grateful for people's comment and challenge in that group. It's done in a really positive way, isn't it, Jeff? But yeah, it is challenge. It isn't just nodding things and, you know, vague observational comments. It's challenge and critical thinking. It's really, really helpful.
And it's something we'll have to be really careful of going forward, because Gemma's done a brilliant job. She's put huge amounts of effort and time into pulling the work together. But it came across as a very health-centric presentation, not deliberately. And I think you're absolutely right, Joe. The members of that committee opened up the conversation to start thinking from a different perspective and looking through different lenses. And it was really powerful, wasn't it? It was powerful. I think it left Gemma thinking, wow, but she was really positive about it. And again, you know, without trying to seize defeat from the jaws of victory, poor old Gemma is uncertain about her future there as well while she's presenting it. So there's lots of dynamics happening at the moment, but she was very professional in the way she did it. And I think the conversation still remained very positive, despite the fact people have got some uncertainty. So yeah, it was well done, Joe. Thanks. Sarah.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in to say, you know, I know it is really challenging, but almost we've got to be open to that, you know. If we're going to make the sort of shifts we need to, we've all got to be open to being prepared to take some firm feedback and adapt. So, and I know that Gemma absolutely has taken it in that vein, and, you know, we're really pleased with what that means in terms of what we'll take into the next steps of that. So, yeah, it's been really positive.
Thanks. I think what was really good about it was I've sat in that presentation probably 4 or 5 times, and it was a completely different perspective. I hadn't heard it in any other group committee, but it was really valuable, rich feedback, which I think Gemma thought, I haven't heard that before. So it was demonstrating a really positive way of how we're engaging. Fiona?
Yeah, I just want to reflect the close working relationship we have with Gemma, with the VCSE Alliance and the work that we've done there, but also the value of the SHIP. And the work that happens in that space. And I'll reflect back from colleagues, VCSE ambassadors who sit in there, but particularly Steve Nelson, who said in a number of our forums that we very much feel like equal partners in that space. And you've created a space where every voice counts. So I just wanted to reflect the importance of the SHIP and how do we hold on to those kind of spaces going forward, because we really need them in shaping the new ICB that comes, but also, you know, really concentrating on whole population health.
Thanks, Fiona. Really important, well-made points, and just demonstrating the approach I think we're taking in BNSSG. But Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And just to reinforce really that, you know, the Healthier Together 2040 work is probably some of the most important strategic work we're doing as an organisation at the moment to look at, you know, future models of integrated care. And I think one of the things that we purposefully set out to do on the start of this journey was to choose a smaller cohort so that we could actually test the process that we were going through and continually learn and iterate from that. So I think it's really good that we're actually getting some challenge coming in now, because we can take that into the learning and make sure that we build off that in the future. So yeah, really positive feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Any other comments or questions around the SHIP committee? Okay, thanks very much. John, audit and risk. And there's the 3 items on there which I think we need to agree, isn't there, as a board?
Yeah, that's right. There are three policies for approval, Jeff. So I'll start with the minutes briefly. We had a good suite of positive internal audit reports and the March meeting, which is really pleasing to see. We also had our first sight of the draft head of internal audit opinion, and it's a positive opinion. Headline the same as last year, but concern was expressed last year about the direction of travel, the trajectory, and a lot of really good work has gone in over this year on follow-up work in particular, and in particular from Nick Saunders. And I think as a result of the excellent levels of engagement, the head of internal audit is really clearly kind of indicating that trajectory is very much going the right way, which is really, really pleasing. So my thanks and congratulations to the entire exec team on this outcome. I think it's really positive. We have been out recently to tender for both internal and external audit services. So RSM, our incumbent internals, have been renewed for a further 3 years. And in respect of external audit, we have appointed KPMG with effect from the financial year that we are currently in. So that was it in terms of the minutes. I'm happy to pause then, or to go on to the framework and the two policies as you wish, Chair.
Okay, thanks, John. Any questions for John on the minutes and the last meeting? Okay, no, John, if you want to just outline the three policies, that'd be helpful.
Okay, thanks. In respect to the risk management framework, it was considered by the board at its meeting on the 6th of March. It's now been extensively reviewed by Audit Committee in March and in April. We needed further clarification around the scrutiny of risk at our various committees and ensuring that it was incorporated into agenda setting, and that's now been satisfactorily resolved. So the framework is here with Audit Committee endorsement, and the committee is not authorised to approve the policy, so the board is asked to approve the document today.
Okay, thanks, John. That's been circulated with the papers, so I don't know whether people have got any comments or observations, because we're being asked to agree it. No, so I take silence as a positive around that one, John. Thanks.
And in respect of the counter fraud and security policies, they're just very straightforward refreshes of both policies. So again, committee's not approved to are not authorised to approve the policies. So the board is asked to approve the document today, but comes with full endorsement of Audit and Risk Committee.
Okay, thanks, John. And likewise, those two policies have been circulated. So anybody got any views or comments? No. Okay, thanks very much. Any other questions for John before I move us on? No, great, thank you. Shane or Sarah, I don't know who's picking this up around the Joint Special Services Committee.
There hasn't been a meeting this month, Jeff.
Go ahead, Sarah.
So there's nothing else to add to it. Okay, great, thank you. The ICP, I know a number of you were there with me at the last ICP meeting, and we had three substantive items really. The first one was an update from myself and Joe Medhurst on the ICB changes, similar to the SHIP. The ICP is a different cohort of people. Some of you are there, but not everybody, of course. And we've now done a 3-year cycle, so every local authority has chaired it. So the chair of the Health and Wellbeing Committee has chaired it, finishing with John from South Gloucester. It'll now pass to Jenna from North Somerset, so back to North Somerset again. 3 years has gone remarkably quickly, but that group has really started to mature. And I think the conversations in that committee are different to the ones that we have in the ICB. It's less operationally focused. It's much more about the bigger issues affecting us. And that led us into a conversation about the 2040 strategy again, and then the all-age mental health strategy and the presentation on that. And I think I've had concerns at the start about the ICP and about the ground that it occupies, but I really think, ironically, as we're at the stage we're at, it's now starting to occupy a conversation about the more strategic things that we can collectively do across our localities. And we've also built into that now presentations for locality partnerships on progress within their areas on the update. So within that group, there's an update from the Health and Wellbeing Committees, there's an update from locality partnerships, and myself and Shane give an update around the Integrated Care Board. But it's, I think the feedback from the ICP is hugely positive. They're really keen to make sure that the work we're doing isn't lost as we transition. And I just open it up to anyone else who was at the meeting, whether they think there's anything else that's worth raising with the board that I haven't done so now. Anything from anybody else? Joe.
No, I would agree with you, Jeff. There was a couple of reflections I had, which is about I think maybe that sort of strategic development, that strategic lens, is maybe not so clear to some of the ICB staff who come and present, and so the focus of the presentation didn't seem quite right to me. There was a bit of jarring, I felt, in some of the presentations. So we need to take that back, and I'll talk to Shane about that and the exec team about how we balance that so it's at the right sort of level. And then the other bit from the health and well, because I've been to the Bristol Health and Wellbeing Board that week as well, and actually as we go through all these changes is what's the fixed points that might hold some of this good practice. Now, it might be the ICP, it might be the Health and Wellbeing Board, I don't know yet, but I do think we should discuss that as a board. We do need an anchor somewhere that's got some permanency in this time of change, because organisational memory, as people start to be affected, will be lost so quickly. So our moment is now. And I just put it in as maybe an action we could think about together about how we might agree what that would look like for us.
Yeah, I think that's right, Joe, because at the moment we don't know what integrated care partnerships are going to look like, but it'll be different because the chances are we are going to extend our footprint to other areas, as we've discussed. So it may well be Gloucester, it might be Bristol, Swindon and Wiltshire, it could be Somerset. Who knows yet until we've had the conversations next week. But we do know that it will change. So the integrated care partnership is likely to change. So it's really imperative. I think you're absolutely right. And we should take that as an action about how we're making sure that we are informing and linking into our health and wellbeing boards to make sure that that is consistent. So point well made, and perhaps we can capture that as an action. Jacob.
Thanks. So I think it's really helpful to see some of the work that's coming through from the locality partnerships. Building on Fiona's point earlier around sort of devolved leadership, there's a huge amount of work that goes on outside of these sort of more formal health governance structures that we're unsighted on, and how we are able to have more visibility of those. And this is a demonstration of starting to do that. I think is really helpful, because if we have greater visibility of the good work that is going on in that wider voluntary care and social care space, it will give us confidence to invest more in it in terms of time and resources, which for that longer term strategy is where we need to be focusing.
Thank you, Jacob. Completely agree. And I think we did have an update here from our locality partnerships originally when we set up, and we did that with all of our locality partnerships. I pressed for it, I know others did, to make sure that locality partnerships were updating at the ICP, because my concern as the chair of the ICB was, where am I hearing that? So where am I hearing what's happening in our locality partnerships? And we've got thousands of people doing thousands of things, and we're really in danger of either duplicating effort or not being cited on good work that's being done. So I think they are points well made, and I'm sure Fiona will add to them. Fiona?
Yeah, thanks. I really see the value in the ICP, but I do think it could be more strategic and more honed in how we have those conversations. I also think that there's we need how do we stay grounded in local? That's the question I want to ask. How do we know what's going on the ground? We've got our localities, but it's not as joined up as it could be. And in VCSE Alliance, we're asking ourselves those questions as well, because we have our VCSE locality leads who each sit on localities. But how does that then link into the integrated care partnership and also the ICB, but also the health and wellbeing boards? Health and wellbeing boards are at local authority level, but it's system level, but it's also that neighbourhood level. So it's looking at how the new neighbourhood plans shape. Obviously, we haven't got all the blueprints yet. So I'm just going to hold that question. There aren't, we haven't got the answers yet, but how do we ground the system in local?
No, we haven't got the answers, but I think it's one for me and Shane to be taking into those discussions next week, which is this isn't just about ICBs. There's unintended consequences elsewhere in the system as well. And we do need to be thinking about what that looks like going forward. Because, I think lots of us have had this conversation about the ICP and its role. It's not a statutory board, but it's got a critical role in setting the strategy and bringing partners together. So, I think we need to leave that in next week, Shane. Over to you, Shane.
Yeah, I was just answering the question directly, Fiona. For me, it lies in developing a healthy neighbourhood plan. That's what we've got to do. So this, I mean, I know NHS talk a lot about integrated neighbourhood teams. That's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about integrated neighbourhood health and well-being services, which is much bigger than an integrated neighbourhood team. And that's the exciting work that we really, and it's tricky because we've got all the change going on. That's the exciting work we've got to get into over the rest of this year, because we have a responsibility as an ICB to have plans in place by the 1st of April for that approach for neighbourhood health and well-being. And that's not a neighbourhood healthcare system. It's a neighbourhood health and well-being. It's so much more. And that's really exciting. For me, that's what grounds the connection between the ICP, the ICB, and the population we serve. So it's really exciting. And yeah, watch this space with lots of things lined up we want to get into. Yeah.
Thanks, Shane. Any other questions on the Integrated Care Partnership? Okay, so all we're left with is questions from the public. We haven't had anything tabled. I can see Brian's put his hand up. Ron Mandel gave us a question just before we started, which I think Shane covered in his update. But Brian, did you have a point you wanted to raise? No. Okay, is there any other business then, or any other questions that anybody would like to raise before we conclude? Okay, well, thank you for your patience today. I know how hot it is. We've covered a lot of ground and some really important stuff. So a big thank you. Thank you for all your patience. The next meeting we have is on the 3rd of July and it's in person. Hopefully we should have much more clarity there around what our future structures look like. But before then, we'll make sure people are kept up to date. And for those of you who get an opportunity and are in the right area, get out and vote later. It's really important for us within this region. And I suspect Dave and Joe and others will be busy during the rest of the day. But thank you, everyone. Unless anyone's got any other business, I'll close the meeting. Okay, thank you all. See you all soon. Bye.
Bye all. Thanks, bye.